I did a story yesterday on our site where I typed out the 83 known underclassmen who are coming back. And I also had a list of 4 what we would consider super seniors who are apparently going to avail themselves of this free season of eligibility, which would be Antoine Jackson, Haskell Garrett, Marcus Williamson, and Thayer Munford. They're all out of eligibility, it would appear. And so they would come back since this past year did not count. It is very difficult to get a perfect read on it because we don't know how Ohio State is going to make accounting of some of these people. Like, okay, they had a guy, Jalen Harris, who was listed as a 4th-year senior, and he's rarely, if ever, seen the field in 4 years at Ohio State. I mean, it has been maybe – discounting special teams, I would have ventured to say he's played less than 30 plays on offense in his 4 years at Ohio State, but he's been hurt quite a bit. And is he coming back? There's a lot of unknowns. We don't know. And if he does come back, and because he was a 4th-year senior, he could count last year as a, quote, redshirt year. Heck, he could count this coming season in 2021 as a redshirt year and come back for his free year the following year. I mean, there's just so many unknowns. Each guy's case is so individually focused with how many years they've been there, how many years they've played, that it's almost impossible. But my count was 83 plus 4 guys who have declared that were out of eligibility, that have declared, I am coming back in 2021. There could be more that I don't know about, but that shouldn't impact the scholarship situation because they don't count, and they certainly wouldn't count the following year when you're bringing in, well, I guess they would count toward this coming year when you're bringing in the 2021 if they counted, but they don't count. So very confusing situation. I'm saying 83, which gives them 2 spots, and I didn't have anybody bring up a name of an underclassman that I was missing. So that was on our site for over a day. They brought up Jalen Harris, and I said, well, to my understanding, if he would come back, he'd fall under that extra pile of guys, theoretically, who would be a free year. So to my way of thinking, and again, the NCAA may view this differently. I don't think anybody's ever gotten a full explanation of how this is going to be executed. For the longest time, Ryan Day said, well, we're going to be at 85 even with the guys coming back, and he's wrong because as of today, he's got 87, the 4 guys I mentioned, and the 83 that, for all we know, are coming back. Now, the winter program begins on Monday, and what typically could happen is somebody will say, I ain't getting out of bed at 6 a.m. to go like, look at Elijah Gardner, okay, a 4th or 5th-year guy, a wide receiver, in the same boat as Jalen Harris, has maybe played 30 plays on offense and has never played. Is this a guy who really wants to get out of bed every day? And I just use him as an example, not saying he's transferring. But they have probably 8 or 10 guys in the same boat that are now in their 3rd, 4th, 5th year who have never played and do not project to play unless like 5 people in front of them go down with injuries. So that number could actually increase, and I think it would increase, and it would play to what Vasad or whatever his name was had brought up. Okay, Raesjon Davis is looking at Ohio State, USC, and Oregon very seriously. He and his parents visited, and they came away saying, we may come back next weekend. And I'm like, holy cow, all the way from California, modern day in Los Angeles to see Ohio State again. It was that exciting. JT Tuimoloau from Seattle seems like a done deal to Ohio State. There's some people saying that is a silent verbal commitment. And then Eli Ricks. The situation with Ricks is not anything that I would envision is going to be resolved in the next 2 days. And this is why. He is in class 2nd semester at LSU of his freshman year. Theoretically, they expect the freshman to go through an entire year of school, and whether or not he practices with LSU this spring might give us an indication. But I can't imagine he's going to transfer out of there, or announce a big transfer out of there today or tomorrow. I think he's, obviously in class at LSU, and probably needs to finish those credit hours to be able to do anything. He's got to finish the semester. So that may be one to keep an eye on down the line that, I just don't know that you see him jump off to Ohio State. And I know Ed Orgeron, the word out of LSU was he was working hard to hang on to him. So there's 2 spots that I know of. If they need a third spot, to get Elias Ricks, who would fill a definite need as a veteran corner to replace Shaun Wade. And this is a guy that had 4 interceptions as a true freshman, with 2 of them for touchdowns for LSU, as bad as they were. I would think that they would make room for him and tell not necessarily Elijah Gardner or Jalen Harris or anybody in particular, but mysteriously somebody would not be around, obviously, who's never going to play.
Yeah, I was telling a Buckeye fan in my DMs yesterday, I think that really good players get talked out of transferring every single day in college football right now. And regardless of what Eli Ricks feels like right now or in 2 weeks, he could be – if he's dead set on transferring, he could be dead set on staying in a couple of days just based on a conversation he has with coaches and family. So that one is to be determined. I think Steve actually asked Day, how many spots do you have left in the class? And I think Day told him, yeah, we got room for maybe one more. We got room for one more, maybe we'll see. And they'll make room for any great defensive player, no matter, and they don't have to be down to 85, even if I don't even know what the number would have to be, but, they've got until like August, the break of camp to be there. I asked Day before the season, like I asked him about, will you, how does the math work? Will you be, and Steve, as Steve said, he said, no, they'll be down to 85. They're not really concerned about it. He said, Mark Pantoni, the recruiting director, explained it to him. It took about an hour to explain to him how this works. And it's like nobody has explained it to us yet, like the media. Like the coaches have, I think it took a while to figure it out, and maybe there's still some confusion just because it took Day a long time to get all of the questions out and get all of the answers in. And I'm, maybe this is something that one of us should do. I'll volunteer somebody else, but getting all of those answers from the people in charge in terms of, okay, so I think that Day said there's like a +1 system attached to the players now, and he was like, trust me, you don't even want to hear about it because it's so complicated. But in terms of like how many under they are, Jalen Harris didn't play this year because of a medical issue. Who knows if that's just going to be one of those things they write off. Elijah Gardner, I don't even know if I don't recall even seeing him dressed this year or anywhere around the program, but he's so kind of low on the totem pole that you wouldn't even necessarily know if he wasn't around because of all of the other receivers that came in this year and all of the buzz around those guys. And he's a guy who has, I think, maybe 1 catch in his first 3 or 4 years at Ohio State. So there's definitely room to move some guys. I just wonder what the rules are because I still don't know if you're over 85 of guys who of not the super seniors, like you can't bring anybody in, or if you do, you're going to have to eventually get somebody out of here by August. And it's going to be interesting just with all of the different numbers and who can go and who can't. I still think there's going to be a lot of guys trapped in the transfer portal when all of this is done because rosters are going to be full of guys who didn't go anywhere. And you've got guys sitting in the roster in the transfer portal thinking they were going to go somewhere, and those their top 4 places are all full. And so now they're going to have to end up at, Ole Miss or Grand Valley State.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. The transfer portal seems to be the panacea for everybody. I think I saw Penn State picked up their 5th guy out of the portal. And Ryan Day, I mean, they've done well with Trey Sermon, Jonah Jackson last year. I think the concern that he has always voiced is it has to be the right fit philosophically. Again, I'm back to that word philosophically. it has to be somebody who fits your culture, which Trey Sermon did. Is he said he never questioned his playing time and knew that if he kept working, his day would come, and it surely did. And he made himself a lot of money there in those Northwestern and Clemson games. So you can look at it and say, "Oh, just grab a guy out of the transfer portal," but it's not always that easy. If they are not, and again, I think it used to be you would ask the NCAA a question like this, and it would be very difficult to get a usable answer that you could actually explain to people. Their public relations has improved a little bit over the last 15 or 20 years to where you can get kind of a real life answer to a question. And that may be worthwhile, I think, when I get a downtime, is to contact their media relations people and say, how in theory is this actually working for people, with boots on the ground over there and scholarship spots? Because if they are not adding scholarship spots for the super seniors and going above 85, I don't think that's right, because that is cutting down the opportunities of the kids graduating from high school in 2021. And I don't think that's the intended desire of what this whole thing was about, that we're going to give you a free year. Now, you also had schools like Wisconsin who last spring, when they were said, "Oh, your spring athletes can have an extra year," and Barry Alvarez looked at it and said, "Well, those people don't make us any money. Thanks, but no thanks. You're done." And, it was never even a thought. And at the time, everyone's like, well, if it was basketball or football, they surely would. And remains to be seen what Wisconsin's going to do with super seniors, either in football or basketball. But, it remains to be seen what everybody's going to do about it. And, maybe it's not going to be that big of an issue. But to me, to have 89 people on a roster when it's designed for 85 is really not that big a deal to me. And I know they lost a ton of money, and I know you have to fund 4 additional scholarships for that one sport, but I don't find that to be too onerous in a sea of money that's out there. I don't find that to be too unworkable for them. And last thought was on Eli Ricks, as we were talking about him. He was the number 14 prospect in the country last year, out of IMG Academy, originally from Rancho Cucamonga, California, which is the same hometown as CJ Stroud. I assume that they are acquainted with one another, and maybe he only went to IMG for his last year or two. He started 7 games for LSU. They were 5-5. He had 20 tackles, 4 interceptions, 5 pass breakups. And I think the biggest issue that he's got there was he split time with a couple of guys who were sophomores who would be a year ahead of him still, Derek Stingley Jr. and Cordell Flott, Flott, I think was his name. The 3 of them kind of rotated with reps and starting, and I think he views himself as an every down player, although, even Denzel Ward there a few years ago, it's kind of like, be careful what you wish for. At Ohio State, they had 3 quality corners, and they rotated the guys, and they actually played great football, only having to play 2/3 of the snaps. So there is something to be said about, watching a few plays and then going back out there and run up and down the field for, 3.5 hours. But at any rate, I think that speaks to some of the thought with Eli Ricks, because he's not, in his mind, an every down player there, and feels he should be. So maybe that's it, or just the stink around LSU. I mean, it was like Joe Burrow left, as we love to say, Joe Burrow left the LSU program just as he found it. So they are back in the world of 6-5 and 7-4 again.
And don't ever worry about Ohio State being over the number. Fans shouldn't worry, because it's never happened before, and it never will. Somehow they always get to the number that they need. And you'll always see a bunch of transfers after spring ball if necessary, because that's when guys see where they are on the depth chart as freshmen pass them by and younger guys pass them by. And then they have the talk with the coach, and it's like, well, yeah, playing time sure looks difficult here for you. Might be easier at Akron or Kent State, something like that, or Michigan or Notre Dame, where the talent is lesser. And so, that's some of those talks are going to be happening.
I don't profess to be an LSU football expert. I watch a handful of games, but so Eli Ricks, yeah. As soon as I saw that name, and knew that he was a quality player, yeah, he would bolster the
He fit
secondary.
right
No
in.
question about that. He's a big ad.
He would replace Wade first day out of the box because they don't. I mean, they have Cam Brown coming back, but it was injured all season. Beyond him, they don't have anybody. I mean, they're young guys. I mean, Lejon Cavazos, Ryan Watts. I don't know. I mean, are those guys going to step in? I'm not sure. So
Now, as for Derek Stingley, he is considered most likely the best cover corner in the country. He's a first-team All-American.
Yep.
I know he got nicked up and missed some games and so forth, so his stats and numbers might have been down, and they don't necessarily opponents throw at him.